Good evening, librarians. Hush House was a sanctuary. It survived the Black Death, the Wars of the Roads, the King's Dissolution, the Intercalate, the First and Second Worm Wars. Not unscathed, not unscarred, but it still survived where even some gods didn't. And through it all, Hush House always had protectors, its barons, and finally, its librarians. While Hush House has itself a rich history, our focus will be on the latest librarian, their potential histories, and most importantly, their soul. We begin in Brankrug, March 7th, 1936. There has been no librarian at Hush House since the fire, 7 years now. Suitable candidates are very difficult to find, but perhaps we have found one in you. Take care on your journey. The seas around Brankrug are treacherous. There was a storm. It smashed the ship like an egg, but I seized this book as the sea seized me. Then the sea brought me here to Brankrug, and Brankrug is where I wanted to be. But it's hard to remember why. What else did I lose in the storm? This book is our diary, and as we lie broken on the shore, we can recall the two most prominent elements of our soul: shapt, chor or fet, and metal, wist, fost or Arab. As is the case for all librarians, we have an element of health too, despite our current state. Shapt represents our eloquence, with aspects of forge and of knock. It's the part of us that helps us unearth secrets, to understand others, and to have others understand us. It is the part of the soul most favoured by people such as politicians and other smooth talkers. Chor is the part of our soul associated with exuberance and instinct. Exuberance, of course, encompasses heart, and instinct is, instinctually, grail. Chor is associated strongly with birdsong, which is appropriate considering its aspect of heart. The crowned growth, a god from nowhere, is able to create along through an excess of chor, causing dramatic constant growth in the ascendant. Fet is next, holding aspects of moth and rose. Fet is the part of us that walks within dreams, and is linked most strongly to the practices of nyctodromy and horomachistry, to walk the mansus and to understand its practices, respectively. Lying there, freezing on the beach, we may only choose one of these previous three elements. The second element is one of the following four. Metal is our determination and willpower. With aspects of forge and edge, it is the element most prominent in soldiers and craftsmen. Appropriately, metal is also representative of our ambition, as forge is the aspect most related to strength, wealth, and the power of rule. This does mean that of the two primary That's better. This does mean that of the two primary edge hours, this does relate more to the lionsmith than the colonel. Wist holds aspects of winter and lantern, and represents what is left after everything has passed, essentially our memory. Its characteristics are very similar to those of the Elegiast. The medium ascendant in Cultist Simulator is the epitome of a bearer of Wist, with their entire being dedicated to the memory of the gods from stone. Fost is our inner radiance and the gifts of sight, perception, and inspiration. It is certainly the element of the soul associated with the watchman, and would be the strongest element of astronomers, mathematicians, and fortune tellers. The two aspects it holds are lantern and sky, both aspects being the watchman's, and the word phos derives from the Greek word phos, which translates to light. Erub is the shadow in the soul cellar, the feelings we keep chained up: pride, compassion, hatred, and fear. Much like Freud's definition of the id, which is described as the dark, inaccessible part of our personality. These links of primal and strong emotions fit well with Erub's aspects of grail and edge, and as such, Erub would be held most strongly by those with the loosest inhibitions: drunks, criminals, and Minecraft YouTubers. There is a final element of the soul, not available when we first wash ashore. Trist is the primal part of our soul, of longing and change. It is our flightiness and resistance to being in a single place or being one way for too long. Trist holds aspects of moon and moth, and is therefore most prominent in K-pop singers and quirked-up white boys. All of these elements can be put to use to complete any tasks expected of an occult librarian, from brewing a pot of tea to crafting an ink capable of changing history, or at least one of them. We can also learn a lot of the context of the elements of the soul by putting them to work in the Sweet Bones, Brankrug's pub that may or may not be run by the exile. We should consider each of these elements of the soul as building blocks, and while we exist here on the frozen shore as a sodden shadow of a person, our recollection of these elements define the two foremost parts of ourselves that have led us to these events. A fisherman from the village of Brankrug finds us, but won't necessarily help us. The locals suffered greatly after the rise of King Henry IX, who brutally suppressed all he suspected of being his enemies with the help of his mother, Lady Edith Hastings, who is also the Nocturnal Secretary, meaning that she has ultimate power over the entire Suppression Bureau. And ever since the Bureau knocked on Brankrug's doors, they have been extremely wary of newcomers. Be someone that will speak for thee? And so, unless we have a connection within Brankrug, it is on that shore we shall stay. This connection is different depending on which path our life has taken. The four who we may or may not know are the village's coffin maker, the midwife, the rector, or the blacksmith. Those with metal will have met the village's blacksmith, Denzil Smith, during the Great War, presumably as allies. Whatever the background, he will remember us and grant us shelter in front of his smoky hearth. Denzil pauses at the door as I wish him good night. "Son'll be back," he observes. "Always do. Used to say that in the war, didn't we?" The words linger as he clumps up the passage. The lamp flame flickers red, gold, red. Denzil is a man of few words, and such, we never learn too much about him through his chats at the salons. When speaking with Hokobald, he reveals some scraps of information on the belts of Ys he had learned from his father. This tells us that despite his humble occupation in the modern Brankrug, there could have been a time where Denzil's family were much more powerful, perhaps having been involved with the city of Ys itself. He's a speaker of Canuic Hanaavec, which, to an extent, is a real language. Canuic is the Cornish word for Cornish, a language that was widely spoken in the region of Cornwall in Great Britain. Before William the Conqueror annexed Cornwall in 1069, it was its own country, and still remained ethnically distinct until the late 1700s. Hanaavec is another Cornish word, meaning elderly, alderman, or traditional. I think the best translation would be Old Cornish. The alderman translation would be interesting though, as Denzil also refers to Canuic Hanaavec as a him rather than an it, as you'd expect for a language. Wis will bring us to the village's coffin maker. Interestingly, we have never met him in person before, but we have exchanged letters. Mr. Kill is the coffin maker of Brankrug village. I once wrote kindly of his poetry. His home is always open to me, though he's asked me never to mention poetry in front of Mrs. Kill. Mr. Kill's wife is another potential acquaintance, known to us if we possess Arab at the beginning. She is the midwife of Brankrug, and poetically, while her husband builds the boxes for the village's dead to leave the world, she helps to bring them into it. And so, this singular family is responsible for both the beginnings and ends of life here. Quite averse to their aspects, Mr. Kill holding Winter and Mrs. Kill holding Heart. She is sombre and morose, while he is excitable and expressive. Her husband also doubles as her pocket prince, as it is stated a few times that Mr. Kill is the shorter of the pair, meaning that even in the Secret Histories, you could be born a manlet. In fact, Mrs. Kill has a lot more to her than meets the eye. I knew her long ago in Paris, when her surname was not Kill, but Raveline, and her sister was a viscountess. Her home is always open to me, though she's asked me not to bring up the title thing when Mr. Kill's around. The name Raveline connects Mrs. Kill to the bottles of Domaine Raveline, a deep red wine of grail and scale with plummy, almost meaty notes. It is worth inviting the Kills to a salon. Mrs. Kill is a grand vessel of intrigue, and is clearly far more knowledgeable of the occult than her appearance as a simple Cornish midwife would have you believe. Serving the pair with glasses of Domaine Raveline will reveal the following. With clear caution, Mrs. Kill samples the wine. red wine from the bottle with the Domaine Raveline label. As the taste crosses her tongue, her usual melancholy melts and she smiles. But then she locks the smile away. "I left all that behind," she says, her Cornish accent has blurred like tempera in rain, so that another accent beneath it has become visible. Something no warmer, but more quicksilver. "I left all that behind before the qualities in the soil could enter my bones, though all of us carry a little of it, and so I will never have children of my own. You understand, my darling." She's speaking to Mr. Kill. "You understand, don't you? And you understand that I will take the small risk," still to Mr. Kill, "of finishing this glass." Considering that the bottle of wine shows us that the Ravelines have abandoned their lands, yet the wine is still being created somehow, the name Mrs. Kill seems to bear significant notoriety. Connie Lee will question the midwife on her dreams, whether they had wolves in them, or whether she craved meat or loam. Daymare will ask her about her many relatives, before focusing on Le Malaise Raveline. Mrs. Kill will reveal that while this has not affected her, she will never have children, just to be safe. Fraser Strathcoyne and Serena Blackwood can be overheard speculating about Bisclaveret, the werewolves of Brocéliande. Serena proposes connections both to Ys and to families like the Ravelines, who labour under a beast curse. And so, it seems that the Ravelines are one of apparently several families that contracted the curse of lycanthropy, and have passed it down throughout their entire family line. And now, the midwife must herself remain childless, under the ever-present threat that one day she too will become a furry. Finally, Fost will lead us to have come into contact with Reverend Timothy, the rector of Brankrug. A rector in this context refers to the parish priest who would have received tithes. So while Timothy would not be receiving these anymore, the title is still a very significant one in a village like 1920s Brankrug. As someone holding rank in the Church of the Unconquered Sun, he is much more knowledgeable of the occult than our other acquaintances, and will badger almost any other guest at a salon with relentless questions ranging from the chapel of a castle Dagmar owns in Mittel Europa to the life and times of Christopher Allopoli when speaking with his adoptive father. He also clearly knows much more than he is supposed to, but not enough to where it counts. He is outwardly terrified of Margot Machitan, the Morgan, for her reputation as a Legion. From the moment Morgan saunters into the room, Timothy stares at her like an arachnophobe confronted with a moseying tarantula. She is clearly aware of it and ignores him for the first half hour. At this point, she turns to fix her gaze on him and abruptly claps her hands. He kicks over his chair, stumbles apologising in the direction of the toilet, and does not return for some time.
"You're the punk I've heard about."
Back to the topic at hand, our acquaintance will, no matter who it is, put us up for the night and help us recover. Importantly, they will also dry out our soaked diary and help us reveal who we are. They will also help us make our way across the bridge to Hush House and begin our journey of uncovering the mysteries within. If you're only interested in the gameplay effects of your acquaintance, the only real difference is who will give you their help for free for the rest of the game. If you happen to have one of the kills as your acquaintance, the other kill will also help you for free. Your non-acquaintances will require a shilling to provide their services, and will also need to be introduced by someone holding the correct aspect for them. The history of ourselves, which librarian we are, and what we might wish to enter as a history, depends on all of this. There are 9 possible versions of us, each with our own history, and each specialised in our own great art. The great arts, also known as wisdoms, are the different practices we can undertake within Book of Hours. These are broken down into the bright arts, the night arts, and the arts unregarded. Each wisdom has its own specialised library, which together form a loose organisation called the Watchman's Tree. We, of course, have come to reside at Hush House, most strongly associated with hushery. Introducing the Magnate. I've lived too long, but I'm not ready to die. I've tasted everything, and it wasn't enough. Give me silence, give me peace, give me the peace of snow. I was rich, but something was missing. I am no longer rich, and still something is missing. Hush House is a place of conclusions, and here, as librarian, I may find mine. The magnate, as an associate of Mr. Kill, is naturally strong in whist, but also with fet. The magnate used to be an ambitious type, capable of and willing to do anything to fulfill their ambition. In another world, they'd have been the perfect grail cultist. But here, the magnate has exhausted the bounds of their pleasures and the world now seems empty and grey. They have searched for the missing piece of their life in excess and also in poverty. Their journey led them to learn of Hush House, which, as we've just discussed, is the centre of learning hushery. In a pit of depression, seeking the conclusion to either their ennui or themselves, the magnate makes Hush House their new home. Each different life path can lead to several unique endings, when particular numens are invoked with the correct incaustum terminale. The magnate's endings theme around finding their peace, by either concluding the greatest contradiction known to us, the city unbuilt, or through the greatest conclusion that could ever be, preventing the second dawn from ever being able to occur. The artist is Grail's representative for a librarian, and is legacy specialised in the Bosque. Bosque is one of the arts unregarded, and is therefore looked down upon by practitioners of the other great arts. Dada was a start. The Surrealist Manifesto, a step along the road, but only a step. The road goes nowhere, unless it goes into the wood, and that's a road we can only walk in the dark. Wait no, not in the dark, in blood. Hip deep in blood. Oh shut up, give it to me, I'll write it. Pride and ambition are the artist's hallmarks, and they seek to become the librarian of Hush House to create something ultimate, unprecedented and primal. The artist's memories refer to the real-life Dadaist movement and a book written early on in the Surrealist movement. This is important, as being involved with Dadaism places the artist squarely in Paris during the early 1920s, which is where they met Mrs. Kill, who was then Mademoiselle Raveline. Through the use of the Bosque, the artist seeks to make their mark, perhaps through the gods from stone, or perhaps something else entirely. I was employed by the Suppression Bureau to preserve the daylight world by destroying those things that walk in the night. For years I was faithful to that duty, but sometimes the things I hunted wept as I slew them. And so at last I set aside my knives and came here where I can do no more harm. Perhaps I can even make amends. Their executioner seems to have been an assassin for the Suppression Bureau. I pictured Batman with a police hat. Presumably, their targets would have most often been immortals of some sort, maybe mansus beasts, maybe some of the carapace kind, or maybe even alakites. Though with how powerful Long are, this might be ambitious. It isn't confirmed either way. Out of guilt, their executioner has become the new librarian of Hush House, seeking to atone and commemorate their victims. Their journal requires edge for mastery, and is specialised, ironically, in preservation, the art unregarded concerning healing and restoration. All of the executioner's endings are themed toward twisting the numen towards the amends which their executioner is trying to make. Because of this, there is no unique ending relating to edge. Interestingly, there is an ending for the executioner that has them abandon their attempts at amends, though we should talk about that another time. The Archaeologist, who I had on my first playthrough, is associated with both Edge and Winter, and is the specialist in scholacoscophy. Firstly, scholacoscophy is one of the night arts, meaning it is concentrating on the more forbidden forms of secret knowledge. Many of the things associated with the night arts are extremely dangerous, and are therefore the targets of the Suppression Bureau. Of these arts, scholacoscophy is known as the most dangerous, focusing on subjects such as the worms of the world and the Legians, since they manage to exist apart from the hours. The Second Dawn is another focus of scholacoscopy, which is, to oversimplify, the return of the sun in splendour. The Second Dawn would upend the entire authority of the hours, and there are prophecies that the coming of the Second Dawn, or the coming of a false dawn, could bring about the end of the world. We don't know whether this is actually true, but considering that there's going to be a third game, I'm assuming the world doesn't end. I opened a tomb, and found, too late, that it was a prison. The plague that I released is now my shadow, or perhaps I am its reflection. It is too late to set matters right. but it is never too late to protect the future from the past. In Hush House, I can do no harm. Perhaps I can even make amends. We can get another crumb of context about the Archaeologist by reading the Barrowchild's eulogies. The Barrowchild, a Gaulish adept who won a place in the ranks of the Ordo Limiae, enumerates the great shadows laid to rest in tombs of power and discusses their various conditions. It's probably one of these tombs of power that the Archaeologist has uncovered. In this case, I believe that what was being contained was a wolf shadow, which are names of the wolf divided. These spirits are emanations of pure malice that terrorize whoever they come across. The magical protections of Hush House would prevent the shadow from causing any harm while it has attached itself to the new librarian. The Archaeologist is similar to the Executioner, where their endings focus on their feeling of regret and seeking amends, though the Archaeologist differs in that they can find ways to either save or sacrifice themselves depending on what is chosen. The Cartographer is possibly the most normal of the legacies, at least on the surface. There is no map of the House of the Sun where the invisible gods walk. How could there be when every year it changes, and yet every year it remains the same? Tricky, certainly. Impossible, let's see. The Cartographer's reason for coming to Hush House is to draw a map of the mansus. This hasn't been done before, since the mansus changes its layout every time it is visited. So by writing a new history, the Cartographer is hoping to make this map possible. As such, each of the Cartographer's endings focus on creating a new kind of landmark within the mansus which can be used to navigate it more clearly, ranging from the light of a new god from steel to scraps of the gods from stone. A map could be used to bring humanity to a new kind of ascension, which could itself lead to many outcomes, perhaps an overthrow of the entire hierarchy of hours. The Cartographer is a representation of Lantern and is a specialist in nyctodromy, the last of the 3 night arts. Nyctodromy translates to travelling at night, the titles of Christopher Alopele's most famous books, and also the next video game, and is one of the practices most forbidden by the Suppression Bureau. Even within our salons, Connie Lee asks many of our other guests about their dreams, and this is one of the reasons why. I remember that I once walked the House of the Sun as a bodiless immortal, but there was a matter that could only be resolved if I returned to flesh. Now if I go back to the House of the Sun, I will be hunted and punished. If I stay in flesh, I will be hunted and devoured. I need a third choice. To remain at Hush House as librarian would be one such choice, but there might be something more. The twiceborn was a lantern long, similar to the diarist before his cheeks were clapped by an apostle. Lantern longs have no body, living entirely as spirits within the mansus, but have the ability to form a new body and return to the wake again. This is evidently not permitted, as the twiceborn has been on the run ever since. The twiceborn specialism is in illumination, a bright art concerning the study of light, mirrors, the glory and its influences. Its centre is the Labyrinth of Lions, which is where Arthur Thomas More resides when he is not visiting Hush House. All of the twiceborn's endings are resolving their hunt in some way, whether that be through manipulating higher beings or creating a safe place to hide away in. I eavesdropped on the songs of the Aviform hours. I'd heard the warnings. I'd lose my mind, my soul, my skin. All those things are true, but no one ever warns you what happens if you get away with it. Which is to say, after that, there just doesn't seem to be anything else worth hearing. The cinemagist has managed to overhear the roost, which, as a quick reminder, is a group of hours consisting of the vagabond, the beachcomber, the sister and witch, and the elegiast. The roost meets up and exchanges gossip in Ramsund. As the cinemagist says, there are severe consequences for overhearing the roost. The powerful secrets that they heard were not worth it, and now they seek to write a new history and to silence the birdsong repeating in their head, but also to find the music that they now know is missing from their life. This search for silence tells us that the cinemagist focuses on winter, and naturally their specialisation is birdsong, the subject on riddles, music, and the gossip of the Aviform hours. Some have said it is the least regarded of the arts unregarded. Knowledge is the terror of oppressors. I have overthrown my share of earthly oppressions, but Calyptra is the tyranny of eternity. When at last we can speak its name and live, only then can we call ourselves free. The revolutionary desires to be the final librarian. As a student of horomachistry, they have come to learn the reasons why things are the way they are. The Calyptra refers to the hours, the velvet, the mare in the tree, and the madrigad. Their responsibility as the Calyptra is to prevent occult knowledge from being spread beyond those who are know, those who have passed the stag door and answered Gerby's riddle. This law of preventing the spread of knowledge is the most fundamental of horomachistry, and it is precisely that law that the revolutionary is seeking to overturn. As you may guess, the revolutionary's endings all explain how it is that they accomplish this feat. There are a lot of endings for the revolutionary, each describing a different way that the authority of the Calyptra can be shattered, either directly or indirectly. My parents were long, which is to say immortal, and long are not permitted to make children. Their punishment is this: now that they know I live, they cannot rest until they devour me. Here in Hush House I will be safe. It is even possible that I might learn to shape a weapon to defend myself. Finally, we have the prodigal. As they describe, their parents are both long, which you probably know is forbidden, as it is what leads to the crime of the sky. For those who don't, any immortal who has children will be overcome with a desire to devour the child. This devouring grants terrible power to the devourer, and they are from then on known as Alakite. One Alakite we know is Hokebald of Posinde. The 7 members of the Legia Club are also all particularly powerful Alakites who act as names for the sister and witch. While these Alakites seem relatively normal, the vast majority are cursed with a permanent, terrible hunger. Most are effectively insane, and are bound underneath the ascent of knives within the mansus, waiting to devour any who fall from the sharp stair. The only way that the prodigal could have survived their own birth was for their parents to have believed that they were already dead. It is only when, at some point, their parents became aware of them again that the hunger will have returned and their parents' mission to hunt down their own child would have begun again. The prodigal seeks to learn the field of ithistry, of alchemy, metallurgy, pyrotechnics, and more, in order to build a weapon that will defeat their parents. Not all of the prodigal's endings achieve this end, but in some way they will achieve their safety, whether that is indeed through confrontation, or perhaps some powerful misdirection. Thank you for attending, librarians. For more lore, please gather under my branch of the Watchman's Tree, and always remember that no matter the complexity of our souls, we can all be defined. I know it's been ages since I last made a video, but please take this as proof of life, despite everything. I never intended the gap to be this long, but when life happens, it happens hard and it doesn't like to stop.